today it's not a water walk. Actually, I didn't do a water walk this week because I forgot the phone when I went up the mountain. Anyway, I thought today that I would do a little video about how I do if I want to lengthen the tsuka on my shinai. This is a kendo related video, which may or may not be interesting to others. For my own preference is around from, let's see, let me just flip this. Right, so my own preference on my tsuka is about 34 centimeters. And I'm measuring from here, hang on a sec, from here, right, below the fold to the end here. So for me 34 is really nice. This one's about 32, it's okay, but even that, it's basically like an inch more. I find it really, for what I do, I find it really helpful. But everyone has their own preferences, of course, and it's easy to make it shorter, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off, and I'll show you how you can do it shorter. It's dead easy, right? But what I've done is I've measured this. It's 32. I've added 2 centimeters or a bit more here and just put a piece of tape there. So what I'll do is I'm going to stretch this tsuka up to here. Now, you can't just stretch it, right? So my technique is, and keep in mind, please keep in mind, I'm not a kendo bogu professional at all. I just like to screw around with stuff, which is a great thing, but sometimes it doesn't work, and that's a problem. But I think it works pretty good on this, so let's flip it again. Now, at this end, I'll see how much leather is there. It doesn't feel like there's a lot, actually. But sometimes there's a fair bit of extra leather, and you can kind of put some holes in a ways and lengthen it slightly that way. It's not really a lot, but it will help. And, of course, it's easy to shorten that tsuka just by sewing this up and then trimming the extra off. And I'll show you that later. But my next step is I'm going to cut these threads. And if you look carefully, you see how the threads are going horizontally across, right? The stitch that I end up doing is what I would call a baseball stitch. But I'll show you that in a sec. Okay, hang on. Okay, so I'm going to start by just undoing the tsuka, I think it's called. Jeez, I can't remember. I think I've said that word many times, and anyway, just going to do that. Now, you could pull these are on so tight. I mean, it's not, it takes a bit of effort to pull them off, but I'm just going to pull just cut the stitching right here and now, right? Okay, I'm trying to see if I can do this while still on camera. How about if I do this? Okay, you see that? Yeah, anyway, it's pretty easy. Just get a sharp knife. And we'll just, come on now. But you don't want to cut the leather, right? You just want to cut the thread. I'm going to turn the light on. Ugh, it's too bright, eh? There we go. Just going to cut the threads. Okay, I should do it. Okay. Of course, my knives are extremely sharp because I make guitars and all my tools are sharp, super sharp. You can even, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, I could probably okay, good. That's good enough. And I'll just pull that off. Okay, so I'm gonna pull these, whatever threads are there, I'm just gonna pull them off. Sometimes for the little ones it gets caught in there. You can use your fingers, or if you need tweezers, that can be helpful too. Okay, let's have a look at the inside, see how much leather we got here. Okay, I would say that there's not a lot of leather here to length. I did one last week, and it was quite a bit of extra leather, like maybe a centimeter or centimeter and a half. So I actually just copied the holes and extended a bit. So that's not going to work on this one. So basically, my next step is I'm just gonna wet it. I'm just gonna wet this leather. You don't need. I don't think it's good to soak it. But it needs to be nice and wet so you can stretch it. Also, let's see. Also, the last time I did this, it was being resistant to stretching, so I tied weights on each end. So I'm gonna see how this is for now, and then I'll see if I need to do the weight thing. So back in a sec. Okay, so this is soaked and then wrung out, so it's damp, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna by hands just pull on it and see what I can get stretched out, right? And it's actually just length that I'm stretching here. I don't want to pull the width at the moment. Although by stretching it, what happens is the actual width of the leather gets narrower, right? Okay, let's see what that does. So I'm gonna grab my shinai. Here. Where are we now? Okay. Up. Sorry about the noise, they're making homestays all over the place here. Okay, let's see what we got. So, see, I can stretch this out, eh? You see that I can reach the spot. So I don't need to stretch this with weights. But look what happens. See all that exposed? I better put the headphones on, hang on. So what happens is the leather stretch, I can't, it's hard to describe what I mean. It's not like it'll stretch in one thing and contract in another, right? In a lot of leathers. Now, these I'm pretty sure these are cowhide, right? Cowhide doesn't take wetting particularly well, just to warn you. Something like deerskin, like which we use on palms and much of bogu does. And you know, I used to do a lot of brain tanning, deer hide, like smoke tanning, deer tanning. And one thing the reason we smoke tan deer hides is because they can get wet and dry, and it's the resins from the smoke, I think, that keep it from going hard, you know. But if you wet and dry cowhide too much, it's not good. But for tsuka, it's okay, right? It's okay because it's not a flexible material. Once it's dry, it's just going to stick, right? I'm not too sure how easy or difficult it will be to get it off again. But anyway, I'm just going to let this sit for 10 minutes just to settle and see if I can stretch it a touch more. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch this up and draw the leather in. But I don't want to have this dry and try to do that, right? Anyway, be back in a sec. Okay, let's see if I can make this work. Can you see that? It's hard for me to see, actually. Okay, so what I've done, I've tightened this up. My spacing seems good. I've just, held it, like the length. Great. Okay, now my next step is to stitch this all together. I'm using a nylon thread. Oh, it's a polyester. Anyway, it doesn't much matter. But it's meant for leather. It's quite thick. It might even be 1 millimeter, maybe. I can't quite remember what I ordered years ago. But anyway, it's a thick thread for leather. Like, you don't want to use a thin fabric thread, I don't think. You might get away with it if you double it, perhaps. But a thicker thread is handy. And basically, one thread thickness. Do you want to double it? It just causes tangles and stuff. And I've put a knot at the end, as you would normally do. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start it here. And just go back and forth. I'll just show you the basic stitch and then I'll speed it up. Okay. So, and the stitch, Just going to tuck this knot in here. Okay, so the way the stitch goes is I'm going to go under the leather and up through it, then across again, under the leather, like next to the bamboo and the leather, and then up through it. I'm just going to weave my way all the way up to the top, right? And I'm going to try to match the holes that are there already, okay? But I'm not going to get obsessed about it. Some of them you can see easily, and some are harder to see. Yeah. Maybe I'll do one, just reinforce this one here at the end. And with each stitch that goes through, I'm just going to snug that up. See how that draws together? And believe it or not, that's quite a lot, but I think, unless it doesn't work. But this should draw all the leather in. And I'm just going to do it basically following the spacing of the holes there, you know. If you can get the same hole, it's great, you know, because in a way with leather, if you just put a whole piles of holes in it, it can make it like as if it was paper, you know. Like more holes you can just tear along that line. It's not like a fabric where if you do more stitching to a degree at least, you end up with a stronger stitch. I mean, really that's to a degree, but watch when I pull this. See how that's snugging that in? Doesn't have to be any closer than the stitching was there in my experience, but you don't want, also you don't want to go further if you can help it. Can you see that okay? I'm not sure if I'm blocking the camera. Yeah. Trying to look at the camera, look at the phone, and look at my needle at the same time. And also, you don't want it to come out too close to the edge, right? So it's basically where the stitching was, but you want it in there so it has some support, because you're putting a lot of tension on this when you draw these ends together. Basically, the edges of the leather just become flush, right? See how that draws in? But it is quite a lot of tension, you know? So you want to make sure it's not too close to the edge so it doesn't tear. So. And there's no rush. We're not rushing this. Slow and steady. When's the race? Because I'm just gradually pouring that in, right? If you do it too fast, too hard, it'll tear it. Potentially could tear it. Yep. Is that clear? I can't really see the screen very easily because of the angle. So, you know how I said don't do double threads. Don't do it. Don't do it. The only reason I said that is because when you double up threads, it just ends up being trickier because the two threads start spinning around and tangling up, right? But this particular tsuka leather is so not wanting to cooperate that I was breaking the thread. So what I did was I went all the way back to the beginning, and I'm using a double thread here. So use a double thread if it seems to be helpful. This is why like a regular, you know, fabric thread doesn't really work, right? Because there's so much pressure on the threads, right? It's possible you could take like a regular polyester sewing thread and I don't know 4, 6, 8 threads, but it would just be a mess trying to sew with it, right? Anyway, so I'm going to change the camera angle so you can see this last bit that I'm about to do. Okay. Okay, I have no idea if how the exposure is here. Let me try here. Okay, that might be better. Hopefully it'll be in focus. Anyway, I'm finding the double threads much better, and you can see it's coming up quite nicely, you know. And I'll take it to about here, and basically what I do is in that last one, I just wind the stitch up a bit. Do this. One advantage with a thick double threads is that it's thicker, so it's, I'd say, slightly less likely to tear a hole, right? Because it's, you could think of it, a thinner thread as being sharper, maybe, you know, like a, anyway, if you can kind of visualize that. So on these ones, it's going to be really tight. So I'm just going to really work at not letting any of this slack pull back. If I can. And finding the stitch width, I mean, of course, like I said, go with what the holes were there already, which I think is a smart idea. At some level, you could consider, like, the closer the stitch is, can you see okay? The closer the stitch is, it's like going into a lower gear almost, you know what I mean? But then if you do too close, too many too close, then you end up with the problem of tearing the leather, potentially. I'm pretty close on this one, eh? Like, I can see these holes are stretching out quite a bit. We'll see, like, when it dries, maybe it will be so much pressure that it'll tear the stitch holes. In which case, it will be a job waste of time and materials. But I mean, for this, I actually have another tsuka that I could just throw on it, right? So, but which I was gonna do, that I like the length of. But I thought, oh, this is a good opportunity to do a little video on this, you know. Like, I love to do stuff like this, eh? Like, I love to fix. Not that my bogu needs fixing very often, and I have a new set of bogu anyway, so that's all good. But I love fixing stuff. Just, and like I said, it's a pretty good quality actually, being able to do all that. But it can also be a bad thing, because I just like want to try different things on things, right? So, like for instance, on my guitars. Like, if a guitar sticks around my shop too much, I'm going to go, oh, you know what, I think I want to try this on it. And I'll start messing around with it, you know? I almost thinned out. I have this flamenco negra guitar made with my dang, which is a beautiful Thai hardwood. And I almost thought, oh, you know, I'm going to thin the neck out. It's quite a wide string spacing, right? So it's good for someone with big hands. But I thought, no, I'm going to make the neck thinner, that'd be better. And then I actually looked at it and actually measured it, and I went, oh, actually, it's only about a millimeter and a half thicker than I would normally do, you know? So I was very wise and didn't even touch it. Which, you know, I'm getting smarter in my older age, I guess. Okay. Let's see, there's something that I sometimes do is I'll pull this through, like so. And I'll pull this way, pull that over, and then I'll pull this one up. Do you know what I mean? In an attempt to bring it all together. Geez, this last bit feels really iffy. Oof, so tight. I think I'm never getting this to go off unless I cut it off. So it might not be a candidate for a Franken shinai. Actually, it's an oval octagonal shinai, and I don't know. I've switched staves around here and there, but this kind, it's almost not worth it, right? Like a regular balanced 4-stave shinai, you can mix around more easily, I guess. I don't know. Used to do that a lot in Canada. I lived there just because it's so dry. And can you see that okay? Jeez, I don't know if my hands have been covering this whole thing all along, you know? Oh, I've only got a few more to go. Come on, we could do it. I don't do it so much here. My shinai last way longer here in Thailand than they did in Canada. It's really because it's during the cold time of the year in Canada. It's very dry. Very dry. Come on now. You can do it. We're almost there. that okay? I might have to double back and re-pull these because they're just not quite meeting, not quite. Can I do it? Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna sew it up to here, and then I'm gonna sort of loosen it, and it's like I'm tightening it, letting it go, and then tightening it again. You know? Yeah, I can see it on. Yeah, you could. If this is all I could do in terms of the closeness of the stitching, I could probably get away with it. You know. But of course I want it to be perfect. You can see there's a bit of a gap there, eh? Probably okay. I mean, this thread's so strong, eh? It's not the thread's going to wear out, but... Okay, yeah. So I'm going to stitch it right to my final point, and then I'll loosen them off and redo it. See what happens. It's, you know, it's because of this long distance and it's hand stitch, right? I'm not quite at the same spot. I'm about, what would I say? That's the, you know what I mean? See how the blue is not linked up? It's like half a centimeter off. But, you know, that's fine. I wouldn't worry about that at all. Okay. Let's go up a little bit more. Okay, so from here, oops. From here, I'm just going to loosen that off. Go back. I'll go back to right where I can see that it started not quite to come flush together, you know. Okay, that's probably good. There, you see how I can, now that there's been pressure on it for a few minutes, and now I can go back and just snug it up really well. Okay. Let's see if I can keep that going. Okay. Yeah, it's looking like it's gonna be just fine. Just fine. Yeah. Leather's an interesting thing, you know. It's actually not like metal. It's like from a living thing, you know. Like when you work hides, you see that you can really see the changing in density, and you know, when you're working with in brain tanning, you use the brains to tan it with. Like, oh geez, should I go into a detail? Basically what I do is I take the deer hide, I use a dry scrape technique, take the deer hide, stretch it in a big frame, scrape off the side, the flesh side, which is opposite the hair. There, you see how that's coming up really nice together. Actually, there's one way back here, it's a little far apart, but I think I'll just leave it. Stretch it in a frame, scrape all the membrane off, like all of it. You gotta be really careful to get all that stuff. And then you dry it. Oops, where'd my thimble go? Then you dry it, and then when it's perfectly dry, you scrape the hair side off, right? That's how that works. And then it's a stiff piece of rawhide, you know? Okay, so, should I go up a little bit? Maybe I'll do a couple more stitches. A couple more baseball stitches. Okay, that's probably good. So I'm going to take that to there, and from here, all I'm gonna do is kind of do what you might call an overhand stitch. Not coming through. There we go. It's very, very stiff, very tight to the bamboo right here, you know. You can see there's a little loop there. That's because it's 2 threads. Let's see if we can snug that up. Yep. Tighten that. Oof. It's so tight I can't get my needle through. That's fine then. So I'm just gonna, what do I do? I'll just loop this through a couple times maybe. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. I just want to, I feel like I want to just I'll do another one up here. This one, and I won't try to snug it together. I'll just sort of let it cross in the open here. I just want to reinforce this a bit because it's so much tension, you know. I was just going to edit this and throw it up on YouTube right now, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait. Oop, see how I tore a bit there, right? That's not good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wait. That's because it was too close to the edge. I'm going to wait and let this dry out overnight. And then I'll maybe do an update tomorrow. See how it goes. Oof, difficult. Okay, that'll be good. Do a couple of kind of overhand half hitch knots. And that'll pretty much do it. There we go. And we'll just cut that. And here we go. Yep, that feels pretty good. Yep. I like. Yeah, so it's this was a tougher one. That's funny how the one I do a video on is the one that's really tricky, a little tricky. And you can see that you see it's, especially on this, with it's so thick, you know. It's not thick, but so uneven in its stiffness. So some places drew together easily, and some not so easily. See if I can find. There's a little spot right here. Right here, you can see how it's a little tiny space, and a few spots otherwise too. Right here, this one. That's okay. I wouldn't worry about that. We'll see how it dries. Anyway, I was gonna say thanks for watching, but I'm gonna do an update on this. So, and boom. Okay, good morning. Here I am with my final report on the shinai tsuka lengthening. Looks all good. No torn holes. Seems like it'll never come off as predicted, but we'll see. Anyway, let's switch it around and I'll show you how it looks. Okay, let's see if I can stabilize this. So let's see if I can focus it down. There we go. So that's what we've got there. You can see, like right through here, you can see that it's just slightly separated in a few spots. Yep. I'm not going to worry about that at all, because, I can fix it if I need to, which I probably won't need to. And I've got the tape here, which I think I didn't shrink down at all. Oh, sorry, there we go. Yeah, so there we go. Give it a try out tomorrow, probably. You can see it's through here was the really tricky part, eh? Like here's is pretty good, but this section right here ended up being a little bit tricky to get it totally flush. But for me, that's fine for the purposes. Anyway, I hope this was at least somewhat interesting and maybe even helpful. I can't even remember if I can't remember. I said I was going to talk about I wonder if I have it here. was gonna talk about shortening it. Hang on, let me see if I have it here. Hang on a second. Yeah, no, I don't. I must have left it back at the dojo. But essentially, what you would do, I think there's lots of stuff online for shortening, but I'll just quickly go through it. If you remember, I cut the stitching, I flipped it around, and you can see there's stitching here, right? If you wanted to say shorten it by 2 centimeters, say, what I would do is copy the holes that are there, and just copy the way that they thread it up, the way they sew it, and cut off the excess. Leave a little bit extra, like maybe, I don't know, maybe leave this. You could leave a centimeter or so of extra leather. Because you don't want to have it too close to the stitching, because it could easily rip, right? Other than that, and then you just flip it around, trim it, throw it back on, and you're good to go. What can happen if you shorten it a lot? Most things will be really just a little bit anyway. But if you shorten it a lot, it might be a little bit loose, right? Because it gets wider as you go up the shinai ways. That'll probably work fine. And if it gets too wide, you can always use the stitching method to tighten her up. I've done that before, actually. I've taken a tsuka that's too wide and just trimmed it down to what seemed good and just sewed it up the same way. Okay, so that's it for now. Hope you're doing great. Oh, hey, listen, any kendo players out there, hang on. Actually, let's leave it like this. Any kendo people out there that love Spanish guitar, look at this. Oops, hang on. I've got a classical and 3 flamencos. 2 blancas, 1 negra. And they all need tuning. But anyway, ring me up if you want a guitar. Okay, ciao.